Welcome, Marwa. Thank you so much for joining me today, despite the extreme circumstances in your country. Yeah, I'm very happy to have you here, and I think people will also appreciate that you found the time, despite everything, to do this interview. So how are you today?
I'm doing great, alhamdulillah. It's my duty to be here, especially when my country is under attack. So don't worry about it. I'm very happy and an honor to be here. So thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a bit about the latest that's going on in Lebanon? I've heard that there were attacks. There were attacks in the wider suburbs of Lebanon. Yeah, what has happened in the latest?
This morning, I actually made the trip to my house in Dahiya, the suburbs of Beirut. It was a risk, but I needed to take it because there are some important papers that I needed to get out of the house. So we did that trip and we made it out safely. But before I tell you what happened next, it was a horrific scene to see. This is not the Dahiya that we are used to seeing. It's empty. It's horrific. It's like no man's land. It's a ghost town. There's no one there. It's just destruction. And like there's no street that does not have a destroyed building or two in it. So you can imagine it's beginning. Like we are at the very early seasons of fall, so it's a bit cold. It's like out of a horror movie, but at the same time, when you just get home, you're home. You know what I'm saying? So you just sit there, you look around, and you say, well, at least I still have a house to hopefully get back to when all of this is over, if it will ever be over. But at the same time, it's the nostalgia that house brings you because of all the good memories. So we had some boost of morale that we will be going back home, inshallah, soon. But at the same time, when we left and we saw the destruction, we said, even if we don't come back, it's been a good journey. It's been a good run so far, and we are very satisfied and we're very happy to be part of this if you will, struggle. The least that you can call it is struggle. It is a war against oppressors that know no boundaries, that do not respect humanity. So when you are an enemy of that vile entity, you feel proud. And that's what we were feeling. And then we left the area and we were reading some of the tweets online that were mentioning a couple of psychotic behavior as usual by the Zionist entity at the presented by the spokesperson in Arabic language. I don't even want to say his name. I hate his guts. He's a genocidal persona. But that man specifically, every night, he is responsible of putting up the maps of our hometown of Beirut suburbs, where he shows you where he's going to be bombing next, where his army is going to be bombing next. So they put out a map of Ghabairi area, which is literally right on the border of Beirut, central Beirut. And because even Dahi, it is Beirut, but it's the southern suburbs of Beirut. It's not in the central district of Beirut, but Ghabairi was right there near the Horsh Beirut, or what's known as the big park of Beirut. So, and they did target a residential building. I think the entire world watched how that residential building went down like magic. It's unbelievable at one point. And by the way, it's one of the most prestigious areas in Beirut suburbs, where you look at this building where one apartment costs at least $400,000 in that apartment building, and it's just gone in a second. And with it gone all the memories, the belongings, and the safety for families who once lived there. So it's not only bombardment of institutions that they have been doing over the past couple of days, or bombardment of residential areas, also areas that have literally nothing to do with anything that Hezbollah ever represented, for that matter. Even the Qard al-Hassan Association, the bank in Lebanon, it is not funding Hezbollah, it's actually funding the people in Lebanon, and not the people in Hezbollah environment. It's the people of Lebanon. You could be whoever you are, from whatever sect you are. You just go and open an account and use all the products and incentives that this bank provides. So yeah, that's what happened today. They also carpet bombed a specific area in Sur, in Tyre. It's called the Hosh of Sur. And you could see it also. It's on because it's in the middle of the day. They bombed it at like 2 p.m. So it's there, and I'm pretty sure tonight the Israeli occupation forces will be also putting out a video of how they happily bombarded the entire residential neighborhood of Haush in Sur. So also that was happening today. Added to that, there was a tour in one of the hospitals in the southern suburbs of Beirut, the Sahel Hospital, which was put on mark last night, but despite the fact that another hospital was targeted, which is the Martin Rafiq Hariri government public hospital that was targeted. And so far, 8 people were killed. Because the entrance to the hospital yesterday was bombarded when Israel was also targeting the fishermen ports. It was targeting areas in Har Tahrik, in Burj al Barajne, in Jammus Street. It's where my parents' house is, and it's decimated. I also passed through it today. It's horrific. You pass as if it's like a scene in a movie. So I can't even begin to imagine how Gaza looks like, to be honest. So that's what has been happening. And the bombardment of yesterday's hospital was the first that they do in Beirut, because they already decimated 4 hospitals in South Lebanon, in Bint Jbeil, in Marjanyoun, in Nabatiyeh, and in Sur. So they're the same thing that has been happening in Gaza. We're seeing it, but at a close or let's say at a smaller scale in Lebanon, because Hezbollah is, you can't compare Hamas to Hezbollah, because Gaza is besieged from every area. It doesn't have the capabilities that Hezbollah have, despite the fact that they've been absolutely amazing resistance fighters over the past year, despite this besiegement, starvation, and absolute genocide that's happening against them. So yeah, that's exactly what has been happening for the past 2 days. And I think we're only going to see escalation from now on, because we also saw escalation this morning from the Lebanese side towards occupied Palestine, when Hezbollah targeted Tel Aviv, it targeted Caesarea, it targeted areas of Mount Carmel, and they were using very heavy missiles. If you saw the videos, if you didn't, there are a lot of videos online that shows the level of bombardment and where they were being targeted. So we also saw escalation at that level. Also, the attempt to infiltrate Lebanon via land is still underway, and it's still unsuccessful, because Hezbollah has been very adamant on making sure that Israel does not, even if it does in certain parts of the southern part of Lebanon, make some advancements, they get targeted again and they go back again. So it's just like some sort of a hide and seek game with the Zionist entity, because apparently they keep hiding. And that's what we saw from yesterday's video by Hezbollah, when they showed us a video from Ramya, one of the frontline villages in South Lebanon, where Hezbollah was targeting the groups of Zionist Israeli occupation soldiers with Al-Mas missiles, and it was a direct hit. It was actually a direct double hit. So we are sure that at least 10 people were killed in that hit. So that's basically what has been happening this week in specific. And we also had yesterday Hochstein visiting Lebanon, visiting Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri and the caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati, and he did do a press conference that means absolutely nothing. But all sides who were part of the talks, they were saying that they have some positive feedback. Also, Abu Ghait, who is the head of the Useless Arab League, that has done absolutely nothing to Syria, nothing to Lebanon, nothing to Yemen, nothing to Iraq, absolutely nothing to Palestine. But he's here because he was sent here by the Americans, and he was giving us some sort of a really old type of speech that people are like, what is he talking about? But that's not what we're discussing today. Anyways, he also made a visit yesterday, and apparently everyone is on board a ceasefire, but they still don't understand that a ceasefire in Lebanon will only happen when there's a ceasefire in Gaza. They still don't believe that this is the first and only requirement by Hezbollah. Just stop killing people in Gaza. We will stop fighting. We will stop bombing you. And if you stop killing people in Gaza, but continue killing people in Lebanon, we'll keep fighting. If you think that you want to infiltrate the Lebanese land or to infiltrate the Lebanese airspace and Hezbollah does nothing or just stands watching, they're absolutely wrong. So it's not going to be according to their conditions, because if it were in their hands, they would invade us all the way to Lebanon, to Beirut, but it's not in their hands. That's why they're still stuck at the very front line, at the very borderline between Lebanon and occupied Palestine. And that's why they sent Hochstein, because the Americans want to see a ceasefire before next week, before the elections in the US. That's the only reason why there's this diplomatic frenzy at the moment in the region. But no one really cares about lives lost in Gaza. Look what has been happening, 180,000. That's a shy number. Some people say 200,000 civilians killed, including 50,000 children. That's the number from the Landsat. The number from the government says it is 50,000 killed, and including at least 20,000 children, with 90,000 injured. So even if it's not the Landsat number, the number coming from Gaza are horrible. And it goes to show that no one really cares about civilian casualties, not in Gaza, not in Lebanon. So we are absolutely 100% trusting the resistance on this one. Every time they pound Zionist Israel, we hear those cries coming out of Tel Aviv, and we hear them initiating new threats. They want to invade Damascus, they want to invade Baghdad, they want to strike Iran. And honestly, yes, it is a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon, and it's a genocide in Gaza. But at the same time, the Zionist entity, without its air force, is absolutely nothing.
Absolutely, yeah. Anyway, your resilience yourself and also of the Lebanese and Palestinian people is really commendable, because circumstances are very tough, clearly. But yeah, I think your will is very strong, and it's great to see. As for the more broadly, the Arab countries in their vast majority are, I mean, they are really useless too, just like the Arab League, which is really sad, because it just shows. I mean, since the 60s, there's really it has worsened, it seems to me. What do you think, since the 60s, where Arab countries at least mobilized, compared to today? What would you say? Has it degraded? Have they become even more submissive to the West, or afraid, or whatever?
There are no real Arab countries anymore. It's just the Arabian people being basically just being governed by the West. And whoever is in power is only an extension to the West. It's like a corporation, and the head office is in Washington, and the branches are across the region of West Asia and North Africa. This is exactly what it is. No decision-making process ever works through, not even if it is something at the very local level, like, for example, education or healthcare. Let's take, for example, Egypt. They cannot even make a decision on that level without going back to the United States of America. Sudan, they broke it into two. Now they want to break it into three. Somalia, they are going to break it into two. They are working on having also Ethiopia start a war with Egypt, because the Egyptians were not smart enough to broker some sort of a deal with the Ethiopians concerning the Nile River, or the origins of the Nile River. Look at the North African countries. Libya, they decimated it. Algeria, it is there, but it also has a lot of issues with debt. So does Tunisia. Morocco is another planet. It's on another planet. And if you look at the Arabian Peninsula, it's so much wealth, so much resources, all in the hands of the United States of America and its allies. The number of strategic military bases, whether for infantry, air force, or marine bases in the Arabian Peninsula, is beyond what anyone can imagine. It's something that exceeds alliances. It's not an alliance. Emiratis and Saudis and Kuwaitis and Bahrainis would like always to say that we are, and Qataris, obviously, they'd always like to say that we are allies. No, you're not allies. You work for them. You don't even work at the level of the executive offices. You are just employees for them. And it is evident by all the investments that they make, all the payments that they do. for wars to continue in our region. Who financed the war on Iraq? Who financed the war on Syria? Who financed the war on Yemen? Who's now financing the genocide against the Palestinians? You think only the Americans and the Europeans, the NATO, are paying for the price of the bombs and the fuel and the THAAD and the Iron Dome that Israel is abusing? No, it's also Arabs, Arab emirs, sheikhs, and presidents who absolutely work for, first and foremost, for the United States of America. So we should not say Arab world anymore, because it is nothing but branches of the empire in the region. But there is this sort of a pulse in the streets of the Arabian peoples across West Asia and North Africa. And they have been witnessing over the past year this genocide unfold in Gaza, and they have felt every burden possible. And we're still seeing a lot of them hitting the streets and protesting. Some of them are nowhere to be found. For example, like in Jordan and Cairo, a lot of them, you can't even go and ask. If you go to the Ministry of Interior and ask, you'll be also incarcerated. So that's very dangerous, but that's happening. But it's always that which sparks a revolution at the end. So I am hopeful. It's not like I've lost all hope, because I still have hope in the peoples, but at the same time, it is a process, and it's a long process. And if you want to see real change on the ground, it has to come from within, and also it has to come from within the Western communities as well. I was just talking to one of my followers on Telegram, who was telling me, well, Marwa, you always say the destruction is made in the US, but it's not our problem as citizens. It's not, we can't help change it. It's not in our hands. We have to pay taxes. I was like, excuse me. When you say we have to pay taxes, it means you're not doing your job as a human being to revolt. If you don't see any necessity to revolt against your criminal regime, then why are you coming and telling me? There's a problem within you. But there are a lot of people, or a lot of friends who are not even acquaintances in the West, but they are friends in struggle, that have understood this, that have started the encampment, started the protests, started the BDS campaigns, and the campaigns to boycott even artists and businessmen and everyone who condones the genocide and supports Zionist Israel. So it's a movement. It's a global movement, and obviously the Arab world is part of it, and it's going to take some time, but we'll get there. If we don't have hope, we really have nothing else to rely on.
Yeah, exactly. Personally, being from Algeria, I suspect our leaders are not, because we could very easily, because we produce a lot of natural gas that Europe consumes. We could just,
Europe abuses, doesn't consume. It abuses. It's buying it
exactly
at such lower rates than the markets that they have, to a point that it's funny.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. But we do have the power to really influence things. But they are not doing it.
Algeria is the country of 1.5 million martyrs. So we're talking about a country with an enormous history of resistance. But at the same time, we need to understand what kind of pressures that is being put, despite the fact that it is a friendly resistance country. But at the same time, it is infiltrated. It has a lot of pressure, and we need to understand that the region around it, it's very volatile, and it can spill over at any time. So it is very difficult, and it needs, as I told you, it's a long process.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also suspect that the fact that our leaders, quote unquote leaders, are so much invested in the West, with all those buildings and villas and so on, they know if they piss off Western countries, all those villas will be seized. Yeah, all their assets will be seized. And I think this is a huge motivation for them to not do too much. It's very sad.
Which is why it's important for the people, when they go to the ballot boxes, not to elect someone who is part of the elite class, who's part of the investors class, but again, it is a process, because who's really being a candidate here? Who are those candidates? How are they spending money in their campaigns? It's an entire cycle. It needs a lot of discussion.
Yeah, that's right. Hopefully for another day. But yeah, and regarding the if we go back to the role of the West, because this Zionist entity didn't come out of nowhere, and the this excuse of saying that it was a refuge for Jews, because they needed their own country and so on.
It was way before World War I to begin with. It was in
Exactly.
the late 1800s. Actually the first plan to create Zionist Israel was in 1907 in the biggest conference that happened in Europe, and housed several Jews of the time who were Zionists, who were the fathers of Zionism, and also with the patronage of the Rothschild and the biggest families of Rockefellers of the UK and Europe at that time, who were helping create that project. And it wasn't Palestine at the beginning. It was Argentina, then it was Uganda, and then it was, at some point they were thinking Ethiopia, but they didn't like that. Then they thought Uganda, and they tried, but apparently they got sunburned. A lot of them. When I was reading the report, it was very funny for me, because the only way that they reneged on having this as the promised land, because they couldn't get used to the heat and the sun. So the last place for them was the Argentina and Chile were part of that project, majorly Argentina. It didn't work out for them, and they ended up choosing Palestine, or settling on the Levant in specific, because it is a very strategic area of the eastern part of the Mediterranean. It's also very strategic when it comes to the resources in the area, and it does have a history of Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and obviously the history of Jerusalem as a holy land for the Abrahamic religions was also a big pretext of their pretentious allegations that they are part of the Holy Land, when they are Ashkenazi Jews coming from Eastern Europe, all changing their names, like I don't know, it is Milkowski or something, Netanyahu, if I'm not mistaken. So it's Eastern European people who claim to be part of the Levant, when they clearly are not, when the Levant itself had its own Jewish people, most of whom were immigrants from a diaspora of Yemen and of Iraq, and also of natives of the region who were from the region, who were Aramaic, who were Canaanites in the region of the Levant. And as you know, it's a mix of races in the Levant, and it's majorly Canaanites and Yemenis and Babylonians. So that collection of races lived thousands of years together. Yes, the area had witnessed a lot of wars, but it was wars against invaders. And it was especially in the 1800s and in the 1900s as well. But as people from that region living together, they had no problem whatsoever living for hundreds of years together, until Zionism was a project to be built on that land. I have family members who are now deceased, who used to work in Akka and Haifa, and then come back on board the bus all the way to their villages in Khiyam and in Nabatiyeh, and they used to do that on a daily basis. It was that close. It is that close, and it was that integrated. And we had a lot of people from, for example, the Tiberias, or what is now known as the West Bank, but it's called the Bank, not the West Bank. It's actually the entire bank, but Zionist Israel came through, cut it in half, and gave half of it to Jordan, created something called Jordan at the hands of the British Empire. But that from that land as well, you had a lot of people who would come and farm in the Upper Galilee and in the Galilee Finger as well, and in the Golan as well. So it was an open area for all, no borders whatsoever. Along comes the empire with Mr. Sykes and Mr. Picot. May they never find peace in whatever hellhole they are creeping it at the moment. But those two people, at the behest of the British Empire and the French Empire, they came along and started drawing on a piece of paper, basically clipping up the land, severing natives from one another. We still have, till this day, people on the right at what was known as now as the front line, on the borderline between Lebanon and the occupied Golan Heights, and Lebanon and the occupied Palestinian territories, especially the Golan Heights. You have villages that are Druze villages where it's cut in half, and they have people who are married from one another, but they cannot talk. They speak from one hill to another. You can find those videos on YouTube where they are shouting from one hill to another just to say hi for their relatives, because it's an occupied land. You still have Lebanese occupied land and Syrian occupied land in that area where natives are still living on both sides of the fence. So yeah, that's basically the story of the empire bringing those Zionist land thieves to Palestine, where later on it was propagated between 1936 and 1948. It was propagated that there are a lot of refugees running away from Hitler who found refuge in Palestine. No, it was a project before that from 1907. And you can research that conference, that big conference that happened, and learn about it and read the results of that conference and the paper that came out of it. And you could completely understand what the plan was. And this is why we're seeing it right now, because we've always been taught in history lessons that every 100 years there will be a severe change in geopolitics. And this is what we're living. It's our time. And actually, it has been happening since the late 80s. A shift in global power all across the world. And we saw it in the fall of the Berlin Wall. We saw it in the fall of the Soviet Union. We saw it in the complete development and rebirth of China. We saw it in the trillions and trillions of dollars in debt of the United States of America. We saw it in the Brexit. We saw it in for example, 3 years ago, the agreement signed after World War One that put the Bosphorus, for example, the Bosphorus Strait under the complete control of the West. That agreement ended, but the West hasn't still worked on it. Turkey should now be getting, because all the shipment that passes through the Bosphorus, Turkey gets paid zero because they lost the World War. But that is, and that the agreement they signed at the time was for 100 years. And that actually ended, if I'm not mistaken, it ended in 2017 or 2018, and it still hasn't been resolved from 2018 up until now. So that's also a big deal. So we're looking at a lot of agreements that happened either after World War I or World War II that are out of date, that don't represent the nature of the land. For example, like what's happening in the Levant, which is why you see this new alliance emerging. This is an alliance that has been brewing over the past 2.5 decades, which is the Axis of Resistance, and which is basically a nature. It's a natural thing to have an alliance between people who are living together. Why is it natural to have, why is it so natural to have NATO, but it's unnatural to have the Axis of Resistance? Actually, NATO is unnatural because it has all of Europe and then some with the United States of America. And then there is speech that some Arabian Peninsula countries are going to join NATO. To do what? NATO was made to fight you. What are you going to join them for? So it's only natural to have alliances being built, just like the alliances that were built between China, Russia, and North Korea, and also the Chinese Belt Road countries that are on board the new BRICS agreement and BRICS alliance. That's also emerging new, and it's all happening because we are 100 years after, almost 100 years after World II. And I think that it's not going to end soon. I think it's going to take a couple of years before we actually start seeing something change. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just being a realist. I don't think that this war is ending soon. We might see some stops. We might see some ceasefires happening here and there, because at some point pressure will have to find a way in to stop the there's no other way except no other word except genocide, but to stop the slaughter of humans and to allow humanitarian aid in. but it's not going to stop. It's going to continue. We're going to see a war starting between Israel and Iran. We're going to see a war starting between Israel and Syria. We're going to see a war starting between Israel and Iraq. And it's not, and when I say Israel, I mean the whole of NATO with the US. So it's a new world war, but with different terminologies and different alliances. It is the same alliance that was brought up after the World War II, but with new elements rising, elements that are part of the land, natives that say no to occupation, to colonialism, and to oppression anymore. And you also have the existential threat that is worrying the Western community, especially the UK, France, Germany, the US, where their economies are in shambles. They have a problem with their social fabric. They have a problem with their values. They don't have ideologies. They have racism. They have catastrophic economic strategies that they tried to implement, but they ended up being a complete waste of money and time and health and human health. So you have that as well. So, and for some reason, they think that if they kill us and steal our wealth again, that then they might be fine, that they might regenerate themselves as postmodern communities. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a long journey, and everyone is going to be paying the price for this journey. But whoever survives at the end will have to just shake that dust away and start rebuilding again.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Well, regarding yeah, how the West behaves towards other countries, you know what they say. They say that the West has created all this new world order with all these rules for others, not for itself. So yeah, we all have to abide, they say, to their rules.
Order of the United States of America, where it doesn't abide by any of the rules, but it kind of makes you submissive to them, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, you know, you talked about the origins of Zionism in the late 1800s, but and yeah, how the West has been sponsoring this movement of Zionism, which was most Jews were skeptical about it and didn't like it at the beginning, you know. So it was a huge propaganda work by the West,
Jews at the moment that are working against it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the West, which is the one who almost destroyed all Jews, right? They tried to eliminate them to the last one, at least in Europe. Whereas Jews in North Africa or in the Levant or other places, they were fine, right? So the same ones who tried to destroy the Jews, they turned this genocide into an excuse to push those Jews outside and at the same time
expand other people.
Expand their imperialist project, right? Because Israel is an expansion of the Western imperialism spearheaded by the US.
It's basically no, it's not. Israel is the biggest military base for NATO and the US in West Asia. That's what it is, and nothing more, nothing less. It's not an extension of colonialism. It's the heart. It's basically the brain in the region where they can go east and where they can go south. It is, look at the Levant. It is the center of the world. I'm not making this up. It is the center. It is and I'm talking geography here. It is the closest point to all the continents except Oceania, okay? Except Australia and the region there, because that's like that's another planet. Going to Australia, it takes 3 days wherever you are. But I'm talking about the decision makers of the world. It is an equal distance, somewhat relatively to them. And they can control the world if they control it, because they have all the water pathway, all the waterways, all the land passages as well. And so the biggest threat was to them, as we saw, because Ansarullah in Yemen made sure to have an impact in the Red Sea. We saw that the waterways in Bab el-Mandeb, in Qanat Suez, in the Suez Canal, and in the third one is we were talking the other day before the war hit us here in Beirut. We had a seminar at one of my classes, and we were talking about how amazing it would be if we saw some control over the Gibraltar Strait, because that would put an end to Western hegemony in the entire West Asian and North African part of the world. But that needs a decision by Morocco. It needs a decision by Tunisia. It needs a decision by, I think it's Mauritania. And so those countries, they need to have that strategic, and Senegal and whatnot. So it's not only about the people who control that strait, it's about the neighborhood itself. So we also how Bab el-Mandeb had a huge impact when it was targeted. We also how the Silk Road, it just, whenever you want to say Silk Road, you're going to hear some bones clicking together in Washington from fear, because they cannot imagine having a giant economy built on good infrastructure, trains, highways, and investments linking a continent, just one continent together, the biggest continent together, and making them all self-satisfactory on their own continent without needing anyone outside, flourishing without wars, without extremism, and without having a foot inside of all of this. That's what scares them. I don't scare them. Hezbollah doesn't scare them. They're bombing them. Hezbollah is bombing them back. What scares them is what's going to happen 100 and 150 years from now, because that would spell literally the end of Western societies and Western controlled hegemonic societies. So I understand how they see it as an existential threat, but also I need to make people understand that had it not been for their colonial mindset and their oppressive strategy, we wouldn't have gotten here. We wouldn't have gotten here. I mean, what stops China from doing the exact same thing of what the US is doing? Nothing. Moral values, that's it. Just abiding by international law. Who is not abiding by international? That's a very simple question. At the moment, today, October 22, 2024, who is not abiding by international law? It's not China. It is not Russia, despite the global condemnation against the Russian operation in Ukraine. But I'm pretty sure the US would do even worse than that if Canada tried to bring along some Russian forces and Chinese forces and put them right on the border with the United States of America, or God forbid, Mexico, for example. So they want to control the world, but they are not as powerful as they were at the beginning of the 20th century. It's a whole new world at the moment. It is a rebirth. And honestly, sadly, it is us, the people of that world, who are going to pay for it. But the survivors are going to taste the real meaning of liberty. That's what I truly believe in. Otherwise, if they win and they colonize us all over again, it will be the end of Western of Eastern civilization, and it would definitely, and I'm not shying away from saying this, it would definitely be the end of Islam.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, the West is. I mean, it has been the case for centuries now. The West has showed that it cannot live in harmony with anybody or anything around it. It's all about exploitation, either through slavery or colonization or corruption and regime change and the installation of puppets in place of the democratically elected leaders. The West is incapable of living in harmony with whatever surrounds it. Same with I mean the planet. Even the climate is destroyed because of the way of the technological choices they have made.
It's very funny for me. They keep telling their people to be vegetarians and stop using gasoline-based cars when they are using top-notch weaponry to decimate the area and completely changing the ecosystem in this part of the world.
Exactly.
Such dark comedy.
Well, they are not afraid of contradiction. This is another characteristic of the West. Whereas China, like you said, China is all about partnership and business and mutual interest, right? It's about mutual interest. And yeah, for them, indeed, China is like a nightmare because it is the embodiment of an alternative, right? Because the West keeps saying, oh, we don't have a choice.
Working.
We have to.
That's what frightens them. It's working. I have a lot of friends who are afraid of what they call Chinese colonialism, but I look at them and I like, what are you talking about? Because I do understand that China expands itself through investments and economy-based strategies, especially at the governmental level. I don't see that as a negative thing. I actually see that as a cooperation because at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for both countries. I mean, we've been trying to get BOT, Chinese companies to do BOT for our infrastructure and our electricity in Lebanon, but we are being stopped by none other than the US Embassy in Lebanon. And when I say BOT, it means that China will pay for everything. They don't even say we want to take your gas or oil. We'll just build it because we know in the long run, it's going to be very profitable for you and for us. So why is it wrong? Why is it halal again for them to do it? They have billions of dollars worth of investments, joint investments between each other, but other countries are not allowed to hold their heads high and say, we want to develop our countries and we want to develop our communities and we want to educate our kids and ensure for them a viable future, a clean, viable future that is based on mutual agreement and peace and mutual benefit. No, it's them versus the indigenous people or the natives, always.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to reach this level of corruption and festering, the Western elites had, of course, to deeply indoctrinate their own people, you see it very easily in extreme situations like the war that is going on. Well, it's more a genocide than a war because October 7th. I don't know what you think, but it's more like a as I see it from the Algerians' point of view, right? I see it as a revolutionary war, which was declared by the resistance, the indigenous resistance.
It was no war. It was a retaliatory attack against 75 years of oppression,
yeah,
of suffocation, of besiegement, of incarceration, of bombardment. I mean, people tend to forget that in 2020 till 2021, we had, actually 2019 till 2021, we had more than 4 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, or even more of the Grand March in Gaza. People tend to forget that there was a peaceful protest in Gaza that stretched for more than a year to try and demand for freedom, liberation, to have an airport, to have a viable port, to have a way out and in to Gaza. But no one remembers. They only remember October 7 good. Keep that day very fresh in your minds because you're going to see a lot of October 7th if you don't stop the genocide. This is the genocide that has been happening since 1924, not since today, since the 20s. And it's ongoing. Only when you see a reciprocal power is when you wake up and you go, oh, they killed it. You've been killing them for the past 76 years. What do you expect them to smile and throw flowers to you? You're invading my land in Beirut. Do you expect me to smile if you come and take my house? By God, I will go and detonate myself in my house and not see you taking my house. What is wrong with you? Everything's wrong with you. That's the answer. Everything is wrong with you. You want to tell the world that October 7 was, do you condemn Hamas? Is October 7? Do you accept October 7 as the most glorious day in all of the Palestinian struggle? And I will never stop saying that. Never stop saying that. Even if this ends in me being killed, I don't care. Saying the truth is what I'm born to do. This is what I'm born to do. They don't like it, they could shut their ears and go la la la. We're going to still say the truth. We're going to still fight. We're going to still make sure that they are not allowed to invade our land. We're going to still fight for our neighbors, our brothers and sisters in the West Bank and in Gaza and all of Palestine. This will not, and I'm telling you, this will not end soon. We might see some stops in it. It will not end. It's either us or them, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was saying that October 7th is, it's like Frantz Fanon used to say, the colonizer understands only the language of violence, right? So it was, I mean, it was the indigenous people who decided finally, after trying every other peaceful way, to use violence, because it's the only language that can be understood. And of course, the colonial entity has responded not so much in terms of like accepted war engagement rules for war, but by targeting the people, by targeting civilians, right? Which is not surprising, really. But now it's in the face of everybody, and no one can say, "Oh, Israel is not a bad entity" or whatever. This is a genocidal response to a declaration of war of a people who have been under domination, under a brutal domination for 75 years. And this is what many people in the West, although there's a change of opinion clearly, but many don't accept it yet. You know, they're still they're deeply indoctrinated, so they need a lot of time to
We're not going to wait for anyone to accept it.
Yeah,
we don't care if they accept it. We don't
absolutely
care if they understand it. We don't care if they support us. They've never supported us in Lebanon. Yet we were able to kick the occupation out, and we were able to win the 2006 war. And by God, we will win this war. They think by killing the leaders of the resistance that the resistance is over. The resistance is the people. They need to fathom that. They keep getting insurgents from all across the world to fight for them, who end up either being killed or flee. They cannot understand that it is a fight against nativity. It is against the nature of this land. They will sometimes win it, but in the long run, they will lose it. Look at the number of Zionists who have fled the country. Look at the flights, non-existent flights. You can't find a flight out of Tel Aviv. Look at all the people who are holding responsible the Zionist regime for everything that has happened so far. You have voices within Zionist Israel themselves that say, we need this constant state of war to end. Because at the end of the day, it's not beneficial for the Zionist entity itself, because they keep calling every Jewish person alive on the planet, telling them that they have a free home that they can come to Israel. It's safe. They can pay you. You can go for school for free. Everything's being paid by the US taxpayers' money. You don't have to pay anything here, while the US taxpayers, they don't have insurance. They sleep on the streets. They don't have anything to eat. And they do that. And then when the people came in and they saw that it is a war that will never end, they're fleeing. Some of them are refusing to go back to Gaza. Others are refusing to come to Lebanon and invade Lebanon, because they saw, up until now, it's been 2 weeks, and I think it's more than 200 between killed and injured on the border with South Lebanon. So it is. And this does not mean that people on my side are not dying. We are suffering. We have lost our homes, our businesses, our relatives, our families. We have lost a lot because of this war. But at the same time, we have faith that we are on the right side of that war. And if it means to continue fighting until we see liberation, I don't see any other way out of it. Who in their right mind will accept to put their hands in the hands of this genocidal maniac regime after 1 year of genocide? Who would trust them? Even the European countries themselves are voicing their discontent and dissupport to this regime. They want us here to do that? It's not gonna, never gonna happen. Never gonna.
Well, talking about that, I'm not an expert in military affairs or things like that, but it seems to me already 3 months ago, there were military officials, high-level officials in the Zionist entity, who were saying that the military were overstretched already, and they could not bear to start another front. let alone 2 or 3 more fronts. What do you think about that? What kind of signs do you perceive of maybe
I think
the Zionist
Netanyahu is
entity?
trying to push for a war with Iran to try and drag the United States of America into that war instead of him, because he knows that his army is not capable of stretching anymore. I mean, if the Golan Heights front opens up, Zionist Israel, khalas, they will just stand up, they will say that prayers of theirs, and they will literally flee the area. They cannot take it anymore. And I don't see a way out of it, to be honest with you. I think that front will open soon enough. And I think all the peoples who are blaming Syria of standing on a sideline have absolutely no idea what Syria is and what is Syria capable of, alongside with Iraq as well. But I also think that in the event the US actually allows Netanyahu to do the biggest mistake of his life and attack Iran, I think we're going to see a whole new level of fighting in the region. And I think it will accelerate the elimination of Zionist Israel from the region. I think that the mistake that Israel will do, if I know Netanyahu for sure, I absolutely believe that he will take that step. And if he takes that step to eliminate any of the leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the price will be very heavy.
Yeah, I agree. It's Netanyahu is in a bind. I mean, if this war stops, he will be immediately detained and dethroned and detained and judged, and probably he will spend the rest of his life in jail, because so many
That's why he
Israelis
wanted to up the ante and call it an Armageddon. He wanted to call it the war of all wars, the last war. This is what he's calling it, the last war, because he knows he's not going to be.
Yeah, it's his last war. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think Nairun, he's the mad king that will take his entire entourage with him to the deepest trenches of hell. And I'm not just saying that out of proportion or as a metaphor. No, I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. I mean, when have you ever seen sirens sounding all across occupied Palestine? When? Ever in history? Ever? I mean, bombing some areas in South Lebanon, and okay, you have already bombed all your targets. Now you're starting with hospitals. It means that you really have lost. You were not able to stop Hezbollah. You killed their chief. You didn't stop them. You killed Yahya Sinwar. You didn't even know that he was on the battlefield, because you thought that he was like you, Netanyahu, just hiding in bunkers. And you ended up seeing even fiercer resistance from the different factions of Palestine factions in Gaza. And you still haven't achieved any of your objectives, any, zip, nothing, just genocide, killing people. That's it. That's what you've done. Where are the hostages now? Where are your settlers whom you want to return to the north now? You can't even return to your own house in Caesarea. What are you talking about? So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and yesterday Hezbollah bombed his house, and they hit his bedroom.
No, that it was Hezbollah, but this afternoon it was declared by the media office of Hezbollah. It was Hezbollah. It was a Sayyad 107 drone that was passing by the helicopter, waving and saying, "Bye-bye, I'm going to do some job that apparently you can't stop me from doing." And it's I don't think some people are calling it a message. I think it was sheer luck that he wasn't at home, because what was being reported today by the Zionist media, it said that the drone went directly into the bedroom of Netanyahu. So maybe next time.
Well, I think it didn't penetrate the room. From what I understand, it hit the window. I saw a picture.
What media said yesterday. Today, they're saying there are new reports. If you read it, especially on the Yadi'at Ahranot, it's one of the very conservative Hebrew newspapers, and they have a complete detail about it. That's not even the issue. The issue is you had 3 drones cross 70 kilometers and you were not able to stop it. How would you ever be able to stop at least 1,000 drones if it happens?
Exactly. Yeah. So he's probably what they call a narcissistic pervert. I mean, a guy who is solely focused on himself, and when he sees that his end is near, he wants to drag everybody else with him. Right? It's probably he's very likely this kind of personality. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think about the UN? Because we have the UN. Well, there's many things in the UN. There's General Assembly, there's the Security Council, there's all these courts, the CPI and the ICJ. And yeah, so far, I mean, it's been 1 year of genocide, brutal genocide, live streamed genocide. And
I'll give you a short answer, my friend, because we don't need to discuss this, because as you have said, for the past year, there was no effective rule for any of them, despite the fact that they had a unanimous ceasefire at the beginning of this year, and we saw nothing of it being implemented. It's a sham. It's a sham. It needs to be dismantled. The headquarters need to change. They need to change the name. They need to change everything that has to do with this so-called veto. I think if international law is not being applied on everyone, it should not be applied on anyone. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's a general it's not general principle.
And whatever you want to talk about, if you talk about the WHO, if you talk about the UNICEF, what role did the UNICEF, the kids UN branch, work or do to safeguard the lives of more than 50,000 young children in Gaza, either killed or orphaned over the past year? Absolutely nothing. So just don't worry yourself and don't even burden yourself with discussing these institutions, because these institutions are being sanctioned themselves by the United States of America and by the Western world for attempting to have a voice, just a voice to support humanity, not certainly Palestine, just humanity. They're not allowed to have it. So their role is a sham. They need to be dismantled. And I think no one really believes in them anymore.
Right, absolutely. It's more and more the case, it seems to me. Yeah, regarding the ethics of resistance, because it's you were talking earlier about Australia being like on another planet, but there's also, I mean, there's the Western world and there's the rest of the world, and the ethics of these people in their majority. Of course, we cannot talk about everybody in either group, but generally speaking, in the West, things are essentially superficial.
Well, the issue about difference in culture is, I think, is the essence of this global struggle towards liberation, because you have people in the West trying to liberate themselves and their families from the construct that has been put against their will on them. At some point, their kids being taken away from them because of this cultural war that is happening in the West. And then you have in the East the war, the constant war of colonialism and land theft and resources theft. So each of us really have their own struggle, but at the same time, the effect of what's happening there is directly on our lives, but it's not the other way around. So the genocide right here in Palestine, it doesn't affect their daily lives, but whatever war they're going through there, it affects our daily lives, because it has to do with their tax-paying money. It has to do with them funding the genocide that's happening in our part of the world. But at the same time, I do understand that they're trying to alleviate the class war, the cultural war, the religious war against Abrahamic religions in the West. It's like if you say that you're Christian or you go to a church every Sunday, you are frowned upon or looked upon as if you are coming from another world. If you don't accept same-sex marriage, or if you don't accept pedophilia, then you are living in another century. It's something disgusting. It's at a point where some countries are thinking about legalizing bestiality. It's beyond what people can actually comprehend. And I do believe that this is a war on religion itself. It is a war on any type of religion. You're not supposed to worship anything, any entity except the state. You only worship the state because we are giving you what you need to survive. This is what they want from the people, to keep them submissive, to keep them under their will and under their spell, to make sure that they don't get out of that specific, narrow field that they put them through with this imaginary liberty that they like. You are free to be whoever you want, but you're not allowed to talk about this, that, and that. But you can be a tree, you can marry a dog. This is how they are containing people. You are not allowed to be a scientist anymore in the Western world, because if you're a scientist, the first thing that you do, you observe and then you ask questions. You're not allowed to observe and look higher than the actual ceiling that they built for you, and you're not allowed to ask questions about it anymore. So they are it's a war against religion, and it's a war against science. That's what it is. And it's a collective effort that we need to join our efforts, whether here by trying to liberate ourselves from colonialism, or there by them trying to liberate themselves from the grasp of businesses, capitalism, and the elite that is suffocating families to a point that they are breaking the family unit, they are breaking the bondage amongst extended family, and they are trying to portray that the state is your father and mother and God, and it's not your family nor your religion.